worked as an MBA in finance, and now has turned his lifelong love into fishing. He's a birder, he's a hiker, he's a traveler and explorer of the outdoors. In 221 he was here and had a standing ovation. And we invited him back again. And now he's going to talk about fishing on the canal. Our second presentation is August 15th, and that's going to be by an architect on a brief history of architecture as it relates to art, food, and culture. August 22nd is Melissa Ferretti, who's a chairman of the Wapano tribe, and she's going to talk about herring pond, Wapano culture, history, and place-based knowledge. And last but not least is Cheryl Fay, who's returning for the third time with us, and she's going to do a one-woman show on Amelia Earhart. Okay? That's the roster.
I'm Bill Prodouz. I want to thank Kathy and everybody on the committee that chooses speakers for asking me to come back to give a different topic, but this is fabulous. I want to thank everybody who has showed up. There are a few people here that will make sure that I don't make any mistakes because they outfish me some days. So with I will say thank you to my wife Tina. She's going to be doing the slides, and she also will remind me about 35 minutes in that it's time to start wrapping this up. So, without further ado, fishing the Cape Cod Canal. All right, why are we here tonight? Curious about why many cars are parked along the canal. You've seen them when you've ridden by. There's a lot of cars, but they're not there every day. Mecca for striped bass fishermen. You know somebody who's addicted to canal fishing and want to know why? You. Some people are here just to learn some of the basics. Other people, like Tim are here, because he wants to take every opportunity to improve. And also because we appreciate the beauty of the Cape Cod Canal. I'm astounded every day. I could go without fishing. There are just so many beautiful sights, whether it be fog, whether it be birds, whether it be animals, whether it's fish. We see some amazing stuff each and every day, while most people are still sleeping. Next. All right. Now, this is a sunrise on Cape Cod Canal. I get the flowers in the background. I learned that from John Doble, a great photographer, that what you need to do is sometimes you have to lie down to take a picture so you get the right foreground. And I wanted these flowers to be along with the rest of the picture. That's what we see. All right, I live 3 miles from the railroad bridge. It takes me 6 minutes to get there. But I fish the surf. I've been from Portland, Maine, from Wesley, Rhode Island, so I'm new to canal guy. I only started fishing the canal. I fished the canal off and on since 2000, but when I moved here 10 years ago, I really started fishing the canal. But I'm really a surf guy. I have 5 a.m. friends. You know, I refer to people as my 5 a.m. These are the people that I see on or about 5 a.m. most days. And then there's another little subgroup, the boys of summer. Those are guys I see even earlier, and I probably fish with a little bit more often. But that's how I differentiate. But my 5 a.m. friends. All right, let's go. I've caught a lot of fish. I've caught a very nice canal bass, about 45 pounds one day. That fish happened to be 21 years old. I'm a part of the Sports Fishing Angler Data Collection Team. That's SADCT. I take about every third striped bass. I measure it, and I take 5 scale samples. I send them to Kimberly Fine at the Mass Division of Marine Fisheries. And just like tree rings, scales can be aged. So the majority of big fish, and a big fish would be somewhere over 40 inches, 45. Those fish are about, let's say, 15 years old, 14 years old, 13 years old. This girl was the oldest I've ever caught, the oldest I've ever seen, 21 years. That's an old, that fish has been up and down the East Coast a lot. All right. I revive and release all but a few bass annually. If I injure one and I have to take it, I'll take it. But I'm pretty much catch and release kind of guy. Next. Not often do I have a camera with me or I'm with somebody, but my friend Tim and I both caught nice fish simultaneously, so there was a camera out, so we took pictures. I'll show one thing. I don't take them out of the water often. I don't hang them by their jaw and let all the weight go. I support in the midsection. It's an important thing because the organs don't like to be moved too much. All right. I was past president of Master Lake Bass. You'll learn a lot of things from these people in these clubs. I'm a member of Falmouth Fishermen's Association, Buzzard Bay Anglers, Stan Gibbs. The club doesn't exist anymore, but the Stan Gibbs guys are out there fishing and talking all the time. Benefits of club membership. Fish with members, listen to speakers, talk fishing, volunteer. So all these clubs have events. If you volunteer, what you do is you get in what's called the in-crowd, or you get in with the clique. And those are the people who will share a lot more information. When you're putting in some time, putting together a show or an event, you get invited to go certain places. You get told certain techniques. That's stuff that takes time to learn. Well, you ramp up by joining and volunteering and helping. But it's that way with any club. So be a member of any club. Volunteer, join, you'll learn a lot, and it's good. Next, keep it wet for release. So the whole thing the state's been doing, because the striped bass is becoming endangered. That fish is still in the water. It's at the edge of the canal. I still have to reach down, use some fish grips, hold the lip a little bit, use my pliers, take the hook out, let that girl out without getting her even out of the water. There's a mortality rate involved. You can cut the mortality rate on catch and release by keeping them in the water and doing it quickly. All right, I told you there's some beauty in the canal. That's one day at 7 a.m. Doesn't get much prettier than that. Next. This was sunrise in 2023. And I had a series of, I was going to do a coffee table book called It's 5 O'Clock Somewhere. But it's 5 a.m. And because we see a lot of stuff at 5 a.m. All right, the canal. Completed in 1914, widened and deepened in 35. It's a highway. About 60% of the fish go from Buzzards Bay to Cape Cod Bay and keep going right through the canal. And about 35% go around by Provincetown and the Outer Cape beaches. So we get a lot of fish that come through. Current changes direction 4 times a day. That's important. I'll mention that a little bit later. Every day you have a chance to catch a 40-pound striper. Not that you will, but it's one of the few places where you can be standing and you can cast into 35 feet of cold water, which the fish like cold water. So you really have a good shot because of the current and the depth. The land cut. People talk about the canal. People say, how long is the Cape Cod Canal? The real techies will say it's 14 miles. Other people will say, well, there's a land cut of 7 miles, but it continues out well into Buzzards Bay and a little bit into Cape Cod Bay. And the canal itself is maintained for depth for 14 miles. Next. That's what the canal looks like. It's not a straight line. It's that, when they designed it, that's to slow down the water in the bends as the tides rush through. Also, and I just had this discussion with Todd the other day, we were talking about why some places are better for fishing than others. The bends. Where there's bend, where the current bends, the fish may, or the bait fish may be forced a little closer to shore in that location, or a rib may form. Lots of things that affect how and why you can catch a fish. So the curves make a difference. On the water, again, this is stuff you can Google. Cape Cod Canal, these fishing spots, all these spots have names. I mean, to some guys, I'll say, well, I was at Pips Rick, which is over here. Or I was fishing over at the tidal flats or the railroad bridge. A lot of places have different names. Midway Gate, but Mass Maritime. And one of the things you have to learn is where to park and not get a ticket. But there are lots of places. And if you're a Bourne resident and you have a Bourne beach sticker, you can park at the campgrounds for free. And that's a good thing to know, because that sort of really helps give you access to the other side. Because some of those places, the parking doesn't open until 6 a.m. And the fact of the matter is, we're not 5 a.m. friends for nothing. We're actually, you're ticketed at 5 because you're there before 5. All right, so there's the canal you can look at. Now, Tina helped me. I drew this chart several years ago for a presentation, and she really did it up quite nicely with a lot of fancy artwork. But this is what the canal looks like in cross section, not the scale. But the fact is, there's an access road down each side. The bridge abutments are 480 feet apart. And that's really, there are some parts of the canal that's slightly narrower, and there are a lot of places that are much wider, especially down toward the east end. But that's how wide it is. And there are people who, in theory, can cast all the way across. All right, now, there's rocks. There's an edge. A lot of times you can actually, when the tide's out, you can stand here and fish. Other times that when you're standing on the edge, the next thing you get to know is 5 or 10 feet straight down. You don't want to fall in there. There's weed along the edge. There's boulders. There are holes. What I don't have, there's a mussel bed right in here. And you catch people's line that is caught on the mussel beds. But the fish hide and live in these holes. So think of these not just in the cross section, but some of them are big, some of them are holes big enough for a fish to sit in. They'll let the current flow over, and then they'll wait and open their mouth and grab what's coming by. That's what it looks like in cross section. When we fish it, we'll cast across, and then the current will take the thing down, and you start out bouncing it over here, and then you keep bouncing it. And then you get over here. And some days, that's where the fish are biting, right along that edge. But then some days, you say, well, I'm going to bounce it one more time. And then you get caught up in stuff, and that's when you donate a lure to the fish guns. It just happens. But it's invariable. There are days that the fish are hitting on the very last bounce, when you're bouncing the jig. When you're fishing surface lures or swimmers or other types of lures, a lot of times they'll actually still be in on this edge, but you don't have to worry about losing your lure on the bottom. But even though you have 480 feet to catch fish, you're catching fish 15 feet from shore. All right, next. All right. The east end of the canal the sandwich tide is about 9 feet. So I'm actually, this is last week, I'm standing here for this picture. And about an hour later, this water here had actually all gone out. I'm standing out over here, and all this water's gone. But that water, so I'm 5'8" on a good day. So 4 feet above, 4 feet above my head is that edge. At high tide, I'd be standing in 4 feet of water over my head there. But there's also bubbles. Go back 1 second. The reason why when I'll talk about equipment, this is all bubble weed. It's rock. This rock's a slick. It's not the safest place to fish, but there are places that you put your time in. You can find places to stand that are much easier. Other times you have to sit down, scoot on your butt to get down low to get to where you want to be. But that's what it looks like. Okay, next. Equipment. It can be an inexpensive sport or a very expensive sport. Rods 10, 11, or 12 feet long to throw it along, a big lure is a long way. $80 to $800. And this slide's a couple of years old, so there'd probably be more than 800. Reels, 5,000, certain size reels, $80 to $800. Line, $40, $50 to spool up. You tie your own leaders, but you have to buy $30 worth of leader material to tie your leaders. Always have a tape measure. It's nice to measure your fish periodically. I don't hang them and weigh them, and I don't measure them. And incidental, swivels, clips, lures, plastic fish grip. I have one that's a courtesy of standing-room-ony. Pliers, canal tide table. This is, and I'll talk a little bit later, this is the Bible. It tells you lots about the canal. Nail clippers, I use them to cut my line. Bug wipes, a hat, a light for night fishing, and a logbook. I actually have some other slides. I mean, pretty much I plan, I know, I write tides for a week in advance, where they're going to be, make a plan. Then when I get back home that day and after my nap, I will write down what happened that day. The number of fish, maybe what lures hit, what time it was, stuff like that. So every fisherman I know has a log. All right, next. Canal bike. You don't need a canal bike. My first 3 years fishing the canal seriously down here, I just would pick a place where I was going to fish and go there and fish, and I would fish the tide there without moving around. So there's a place called 100 Steps. It's more than 100 steps. Well, it's 88 steps, but the steps aren't the whole way. You're going through paths in the woods, but it's on the mainland side of the canal, one of those big rest areas. You can park there, and you can walk down and get to pole number 240, which is one of the poles in the canal. But it's a walk down, and back in the day, when there were people who were catching serious fish and taking them home, then they would catch a nice fish, and they'd be down there at the bottom of the 100 steps, not have a bike, and have to hike that 30-pound bass up the hill. Not me. All right. I have a Striper Conservation license plate. SC, Striper Conservation 701. It's my birthday. So I figure once I start losing my memory, I'll either know my license plate or my birthday. But there's the canal bike. I've got multiple poles, 2 poles there. I have a third one when the albies might be in the canal, and I might be wanting to throw something a little bit lighter. I'll carry a third rod. One of the most important things is right here. The ski stick, the ski pole, take the little stuff off the bottom. When I'm walking down the rocks, I'll hold my rods in these hands, and I will always have that pole, and I will always make sure that that is wedged somewhere or right on a rock, and not so that when I'm stepping down, remember how weedy that looked? It's like this, it's moving. You don't want to fall. So that's, and these baskets here, I carry a couple of lures. All right, next. Then some people have electric bikes, and some people have electric tricycles. I'm not saying names, but that's an electric trike, a couple of rods, lots of gear, all good stuff. All right, a few lures. And I'll mention when I talk about lures, but this is giving you the basic thing. That's a pencil popper. You work that on the surface. This is a stick shad or something else that I'll swim. This is what I would call a paddle tail lure, a jig head with a big rubber tail, which tails are interchangeable. When bluefish come, they like to eat it from right here under the hook over there. And it's uncanny how they can chop it off right there most times. All right, and then there's the magic swimmer. And it's named Magic Swimmer because it works like magic. And it was huge 8 years ago, everybody was catching fish on them. And to tell you the truth, last couple of weeks, it's been one of my go-to lures. Just, it recycled. This is a loaded cork and cordell popper. So this was a hollow pencil popper, and this is filled with buckshot or lead shot. So it weighs about 4 ounces and it sinks. And I bounce this on the bottom, or I fish the whole water column. So, because the fish can be anywhere from the bottom to the top, or somewhere in that 35 to 50 feet in between. And then this is sort of one of the newer style lures. They're wider at the end, they might have a little extra weight here, and they are for casting to the middle. Not that you always have to cast to the middle, but sometimes that's where the fish break. So those are some basic lures. Next, jigs, 3 to 5 ounces. Paddle tails. All these people make different paddle tails. Savage, gags, Bill Hurley. The newer ones with this Fish Lab and plus Canal Bait and Tackle has their knockoff. And it's much more integrated with the head of the lure and the tail. It just presents, it's a nice tight presentation. And they cast a little bit better because they're not quite as floppy. And then loaded pencils. Okay. New lure types. Made for distance. You know, it's like when Tiger Woods started playing, came on the golf scene, and everybody started hitting the ball past the John Daly distance. Well, the technology has changed, so all of a sudden people have better rods, better lures, and they want to throw it further. And you know, it was like, boy, look at that, way that guy casts. PKs, happy as a clam, custom, people make their own. Heavy plastic versus loading. So striker gear has a rocket, which is similar to a loaded cordell, but it's a hard, heavy piece of plastic. And you don't have to load it yourself, because I know some people who have loaded cork and cordells and have them break and they have a fish break off, as opposed to this rocket, which is solid. All right, the integrated weight and the paddle tail, that's that. The Canal Bait and Tackle and the fish there. Next. So, this is one. This is about 7 inches long, weighs 4 ounces. I drilled a couple of holes in it, filled it with shot, and used hot melt glue to seal it back up. So next. Now the hard plastic striker gear looks almost the same, weighs about the same, but it's one piece. It's not hollow, and you don't load it yourself. Next. This is that integrated, so this is the tail, the body, and that head. So when we saw that other one, the head was a little thinner. This is just more of a compact piece, but it works really well. Okay. Talked about the lures. These manufacturers, Guppy, Gibbs, Happy as a Clam, PK. And actually, I have a friend in the audience, Hog Island, and he's made a couple of lures that we've been testing and experimenting with, and we've got some nice fish on those lures. And so we're developing a bunch of things with those. Metal lip swimmers, you know, not enough canal guys use them, but surf guys use them all the time. And they work in the canal too, especially in certain currents.
Is that a Danny or a polyp?
Pardon?
Danny or
A Danny, yeah, exactly. So a Danny, which is a great beach lure, a great rock lure, in the canal, around half an hour either side of the turn, in the middle of the night, a black Danny, and I've had fish just absolutely explode right in front of me on those lures. They're pretty neat. They just, They work just like that. All right. Then there are glide baits. Mystic Road and Spellbinder. Very good. Striper Gear has a stick bait. Darters and Needles. Big Fish, and the guy who's been making lures, he's a Mass Bass friend of mine. Joe Pye really is an artist with what he makes. My friend Jack Shepard makes lures, and his are very reasonably priced. And Mystic Lures, those are those new glide baits. All right. Colors: white, yellow, black, mackerel, pink or squid. It's about all I need. Regulation changes. May of 2020, inline circular, because what happened was the striped bass population's in decline again because there has been poor recruitment, which means not a lot of baby stripers coming. That's the recruitment. It has not been great. They have year classes. 2011 was wonderful. 2015 was very good. Those fish are now 8 years old. The reason that they had that slot, 28 to under 35, was to try to get these fish to be 8 years old, hit 28 inches, breed at least once before they get caught and taken. What happened was there were so many fish from the 2015 year class, these 8-year-old fish, well, they were 7 years old last year, because some of them were precocious and were growing really fast. And the take that they estimated for recreation, the take is estimated. Commercial, they know a quarter, but they estimate, and twice as many fish fell into that slot and got taken, so we basically lost a good percentage of breeders. So they changed the rule, emergency May 26 to October 26, 28, and now the slot's 28 inches to under 31 instead of 28 to under 35. And just last week, or the week before, Division of Marine Fisheries, Atlantic State Marine Fisheries met. That rule is now made, that emergency regulation is now going to run until October 2024. It's been deemed very successful in keeping a lot more fish in the population. There is a commercial striped bass market, and they're $29 or $30 a pound. You can buy them, and there is a tradition. I mean, people come to the Cape from everywhere and want to buy a fresh striped bass and eat it. And so there is an 800,000 pound commercial. Now, we think that's a lot of fish, but recreational anglers take about 5 to 10 more, catch 5 to 10 more times of that. And then if 10% of them die, they're taking out that many fish too. Yeah, there are whole talks that can be done on fisheries management, fisheries regulation, or some people would say fisheries mismanagement. But personally, I know a bunch of the people involved. They're doing the best they can with the data they've got. And they set the rule in 2020, no commercial fishing in the Cape Cod Canal, because a guy could catch 235 to 4+ inch fish on commercial days and take them out. Well, how can you tell that commercial guy who's taken out a big fish to someone who's limited to take a 28 to 35? And so they changed. There's a lot of things with the rules. No commercial fishing in the canal. Okay. Now, this is the newest poster that they put out. And I just saw it last week, 28 to 31. This is a great poster. Why did the regulations change? The 2015 year class is one of the largest ever. That's 2011. Also, all those fish we're catching that are 45 inches long are from 2011. All of these fish that are 30, up to about 32, 33, 34, 35 inches, those are 8-year-olds from 2015. But the quote, they took, this is the recreational harvest had been running here. In 2022, they caught that many more, so they said, we got a problem. That's why they put the emergency regs. If you see these signs around, they're great, they're good reading. And you can get a striping plate, you can sign up for some of these programs where you become a citizen scientist and you can learn more about the regs. So, great poster. In 2020, they put this up, 20 to 35. Good people, they listen to that. Okay, next. And then all of a sudden, these signs showed up on the canal too. No commercial fishing. And you can't have within 1,000 feet of the canal. All right, now let's get to talk about fishing a little bit. Knots. Everybody has to know knots to fish. Palomar. Catch your braid, which most of us fish with, to a swivel. It's a Palomar knot. It's extremely simple to use, and it's pretty much a no-fail knot. You should be able to tie it in the dark if you're a good fisher. Double uni, leader in a line without a swivel. Most of us use a swivel because we're throwing a big leader. We're not too worried about the fish being picky. But when we're fishing for things other than striped bass, like false albacore, bonito, that are fishing with their eye, or hunting with their eyes as opposed to their lateral line, they're very picky, and so you're tying lures directly to your leader. You're tying your leader directly to your braid. You're basically not showing an extra flash of metal to anybody to spook them. Have a knot you have confidence in. Next. All right. How to fish the canal. Know how each lure works. One of the good things about having a day where you're not catching any fish is you get a chance to test all your lures. And you see how they swim, what happens in different currents. And there are times I'll put on a lure, I'll reel it in once, and I'll say, the current's not right for this lure, and I'll just put it away and go to it and try another one. But you sort of learn how different lures work at different times. Now, easiest lure to fish, when I've taken some friends out, or people will say, gee, you got to take me fishing. I say, okay, first of all, I say, meet me at 4 a.m. That sort of weeds out a good number of people. And if I know that they meet me where I say to meet them at 4 a.m., I know we got a good start. So these sand eels, what I say, just cast it out, count to 3, count to 5, whatever, and then just reel. You just do this. Just cast and reel. It's all you have to do. Because some days, that's all you have to do. And that's the easiest way. So then you can get fancy. Move the rod up, tip up and down a little extra. That gives it different action. Vary counts. Count to 3 seconds, count to 8. So you're fishing different parts of the water column, you don't know where the fish are. Then, more advanced, you learn how to deep jig, bounce the bottom, and you can actually feel that so you get a current running this way, you bounce it, and you can feel it go. And you can actually feel the rod tip doing this. And then you can feel the fish hit goes, and then you set the hook. But you get caught on mussel beds, other people's line, rocks, crap in the bottom of the pool, probably shopping carts, I don't know. But fish spend more of their time down on the bottom than anywhere else, which makes jigging effective. Next. All right. Second eat, these magic swimmers with a stick shad or the glide bait, you cast. Instead of keeping your rod tip up like this, you sort of keep it at a little bit of an angle, so that, like that, and you reel, and you're just doing this. That's all you're doing. And all of a sudden, it rips the rod out of your hand. So that's what you do. You might sweep it once in a while. Okay. Pencil poppers and surface lures. There is nothing as exciting as throwing a lure and having a 25-pound bass absolutely explode on that lure. Make a splash this big, and your rod goes down, and your drag on your reel starts to scream. That's why we're addicted. That's what I said about your friends who were addicted. That's why. All right, then you cast. Put the butt right like that, and then you hold it like that, you hold it like that, you reel, and you're doing this. All right. I actually have different retrieves. I even name my retrieves. Not that I tell anybody, but I'm saying, okay, now I'm going to use the fleeing bait fish. So I'm thinking, I'm going to move that a little bit quicker to make it look like it's trying to get away. Or I have one that's like a dime bait. Everybody here ever had a goldfish in a bowl. Remember when that goldfish started to die? It would lie on its side, it would drop down, then it would go. That is how I invented the dying bait retrieve.
You didn't eat that well, man.
And then there are the stun bait, and they're stunned because these fish aren't always just hitting the bait with their mouths. A lot of them are whacking the bait with their tails to stun it and then come back and eat it. So that's why you actually have to invent a retrieve called a stun bait fish. The lure gets hit. Sometimes they don't get it. Sometimes they're in competition, and 3 or 4 will be chased. There'll be days when the fishing's great. There'll be days when you're casting and you'll get 4 hits in a row before one hooks up on the same cast. All right. Next. All right. So this is at dawn. And it's hard to see, but you see this rod, that's nicely defined there. But you see this is kind of fluttery, because I'm doing a little bit of fluttering of that. And the tip of the rod moves different than the butt of the rod, so just give him a little bit of action. And go back 1 second. People say, how do you decide when it's time to fish a surface sport? Because for some reason, typically you don't throw them when it's dark, because that's not how the fish are feeding. But what I do is I take the lure and I hold it up to the sky. And if I can see a good solid outline, which means the sky is now light enough, I'm pretending I'm a fish under water looking up and say, oh, I can now see the outline of that lure clearly. I can now effectively start fishing the surface. Next. Next. That's okay. All right, the loaded lures, you fish like a jig, you cast it. All right, now, metal lip swimmers, casting distance limit. We have this gentleman here talking exactly about the classic Danny. And that lure was invented by a guy, first name was Dan. And it's a legendary lure. Everybody should have one in their bag and know how to fish. Because it's a metal lip lure, but it doesn't die. You don't think that metal lip will make it die. No, what it does is it makes it wobble. Darters, they wobble, they have a different wobble. Needles, picture taking a broomstick, cutting a piece of broomstick about 7 or 8 inches long, putting 2 hooks on it, cast it out, and then just reel it slow, and then slow down. And you have to have confidence that the fish will hit that board. It's wicked in rock piles, along beaches, and even certain times in the canal. Just a great lure with absolutely no action whatsoever. Next. Yep, feel. All right, another beautiful shot. We are blessed being fishermen to see foggy mornings where you cannot see this far in front of your face. This was looking up toward the Bourne Bridge, 5:31 a.m. My kind of morning. Sunrise was just around 6, so at 6:17 I've got a little piece of sun, and the fog, sometimes you'll see that fog, and during the course of a couple of hours on the canal in the morning, that fog will roll in and roll out. when the current changes and the water's coming out of Buzzards Bay or coming out of Cape Cod Bay, depending on the temperature of the water, temperature of the air, that fog will roll one way or the other. It will clear up or it will come back. Just absolutely lovely. Next. When to go? Why do I see all the cars parked along the canal? Because there were cell phones and people call all their friends when the fish show up. But there are sometimes there are people that know certain days there are loon tides. We expect certain days there to be fish because the conditions are historically correct. People are there. But I say go fishing when you can. I say I like 1.5 hours before sunrise to 1.5 hours. I've told my wife I just need 3 hours a day to pursue my passion. That's not counting naps. But I need 3 hours a day. And give me that every day and I'm good. Or 2 hours before the current turn, 2 hours after. Again, dawn breaking tides are when these two things happen at the same time. The best opportunity is twice a month. Every canal article, anybody who writes an article, or Eastern Eddie will write an article, or he'll give a video fishing report, and everybody's saying, all right, we have dawn-breaking tides coming up this week. Everybody get ready, because you're going to get those situations. Fishermen schedule for vacation. I was fishing the other last moon tide, and met a new guy. He was from New Jersey. He basically scheduled his week up for the dawn-breaking tides. Lo and behold, we had 4 days of absolute nothing. We got no fish on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. And they were perfect conditions. On Friday, it made his week, and it sure made, it was an epic day. It made everybody's day. It made everybody's week. All right. There are changes happening. Due to water temperature, due to the whether the fish are the young of the year classes, those years where they're successful breeding as they get older. I joke that the fall run used to start in September, now starts the middle of August. You know, fish are looking at the moon and the sun and how long the day is. Starting to think, I've got to go back off the Chesapeake Bay. I've got to go winter in North Carolina. There's no bait, there's no fish. There was less big bait in those years. More bait in 2023. May, June, and July were absolutely great this year. All right. Fish seem to have shorter patterns. Used to be you have 3 to 5 days of good action. Now it's been only one. And then you've lost the moon, or you've lost that time. But in July, there were 5 straight days where people were catching fish twice a day. Morning bite and an afternoon bite. So, just when you thought you had it figured out, you think you know, you have a plan, everything lines up right, shut up. Happens. All right, intelligence. Read on the Water magazine has fishing reports. Fisherman magazine, Canal report by Eastern Eddie, who's actually in the audience back there. They get intelligence, but fish have fins. Eddie also does a show on TV. But fish have fins, they move. They're pearls. Local guy who was on County Road. He writes the Salty Cape and he does the monthly Cape Cod report, or Upper Cape report, and on the water. So you get some intelligence. The local tackle shops, go there, you'll get intelligence. But they can say, I caught these fish, you know, the fish were here on Wednesday, or they were here on Tuesday. Now I'll use that information and say, well, if they were there, they're probably moving one direction or another. I'll sort of tweak where I go based on that intelligence because they have fins. But you can pick up some really good intelligence, which is, gee, white's working or yellow's working. And that might mean they're on a certain bait, whether it's whiting in the spring or whether it's on mackerel or they're on squid. So those baits may stay around a week or two, so that intelligence has a little more lasting power than knowing where the fish were 2 days ago. So that helps you with lure size and color selection. Next. All right. When you go, practice casting before you go. Or go when there's no one else around. That's a good thing. Have your gear ready when you arrive. I don't know how many times I'm fishing and I see a guy come down, and granted, he's probably a working guy, probably has a house full of kids, but he's there to come fishing. But when he gets there, it's not that he does anything for it. He's putting on his leaders, he's putting the rod together, tying stuff up. And I will say this, and there are other people in the room who will agree, that they have caught their only fish of the day on the very first cast when they get there. So the key is, if you've got a plan and a place to go, you want to be ready when you get there. Too many times I've caught a fish, and it's been the last fish, because I've gotten to the bite late. And people have been catching, and I get there, I get a chance to get one cast in, I'll get one nice fish, and they've moved on. It's just, but be ready. Expect to fish every cast. Otherwise, you wouldn't do a couple hundred casts if you weren't expecting to catch fish. But no, there's no guarantee you'll even catch one that day. Practice canal etiquette. Respect the fish. They are a wonderful resource. They're a great exercise. They get us up and rolling every day and interested in doing what we do. Respect the fish. All right, so I'm fishing with 50 of my closest friends. But not quite 50, but that's the East End Boat. And actually, these guys all knew what they were doing. I jumped in between a couple of these guys, and we caught some nice fish. That was during one of those blitzes in 2017 and 2018. There's not 50 guys in that picture, but there are places, like, you can flip it here. Check this thing. All right, hold on. But there are places like Buzzards Bay Park, the railroad bridge on the mainland side. I finally figured out the best way to describe it. Some people call it combat fishing. But here's the image. Picture the Rockettes, Rockefeller Center, where these people can put one arm on the shoulder of the next one arm on the shoulder of the next one, and instead of kicking, they're basically cast. Now they're synchronized pretty much, but it's like fishing with the Rockettes. All right, so do what others use for a lure type. Don't cross them up. Know the current speed and directions. The current is pretty consistent. I mean, if 1 minute it's going like this, the next minute it's going like this, guess what? It's going to do that the next minute too. So the guy on this side down, he throws first, then the next person, then the next person, then the lures all travel like this, and then this guy pulls in first, and then this guy. And now, if someone hooks up, they'll say fish on, and those guys below him are out of luck for a minute because that guy's got to land his fish. And you never cast across somebody. Okay, keep going. We're in the wrap here. Everybody has a cell phone, calls their friends. Some people like to fish the combat zone or fish Rockette style. Not me, though. I fish with 4 or 5 folks who I know, and we do just fine as close as the Rockettes, but we feel like we all know what we're doing. And trust one another. Look for vehicles, see the fish there or avoid it. Next, safety. Rocks are slippery, boots with studs, rubber boots that don't slip, or corkers with studs, waders or boots. Now, People say, well, you don't want to fall in the canal with waves. I don't wade in the canal. I wade them so I can sit on the weeds and get down. I want to fish standing next to the water, so when I land the fish, I can handle it. I don't want to fish from the access road, hook a really nice fish, and then have to navigate down 30 feet of slippery rocks to get that fish off my line. Walking stick. I promised Tina when I moved here that I would wear corkers and I would have a walking stick because she worried about me falling every single day. Nitrile gloves or tape on the casting finger. A lot of people have fishing fingers. I have things on it. Bug spray. Places to store your glasses and your hearing aids. So even without my hearing aids, I can hear fish when they're feeding. Just one of those things. Water, gotta hydrate. Fish grip and pliers. I fish in prime time. That's at those 2 hours around sunrise. Beauty in the dark. It's great. Be ready. Okay, let's summarize what I just said. Fish other places besides the Cape Cod Canal. We have beautiful water, whether it be on Martha's Vineyard, whether it be Rhode Island, whether it be Maine, whether it be other places on the Cape. There are lots of places to catch fish. I mean, that's actually dawn. That's the first sun of sunrise hitting that fish. And that's on Martha's Vineyard. Learn and experiment. Learn that even with the best or perfect conditions, you will be shut out. One thing about conditions, one of my best ever days fishing was Tropical Storm Jose. You could see the sheets of wind and rain coming across the canal, and it would stop momentarily, and another sheet. I spent hours fishing during Tropical Storm Jose, and I just caught fish every cast. You know, with the right rain gear, you can do it. Go ahead. Great Canal Reeds, 7 miles after sundown, East End Eddy. He talks about how to catch the canal, how to fish the canal, and about some of the characters that are in the canal. He wrote this book before he knew me. I met him on his book tour. Fishing the Cape Cod Canal, A Surfcaster's Guide to Stripers by D.J. Moe. Probably one of the best books written that's just dedicated to fishing the canal. All of the secrets are there, and DJ knows his stuff. My Fishing Cape Cod. So Ryan Collins has this virtual club called My Fishing Cape Cod. He's given reports and information, trips, everything. Good stuff. Next. All right. I'm not going to go into detail. Have a canal guide. Keep going. That's what it looks like. All right, I've highlighted one day. Next. This is what that one day looks like. See these little asterisks and these 2 asterisks? That actually means something. A friend of mine told me and taught me all about that. That means the minus tide of 0 to 1 feet. So this is for navigators who use the canal. They need to know if it's going to be a foot shallower, or if it's going to be 2 foot shallower. So you get minus tides with double asterisks. Keep going. All right, now, I had a book like this. I had this on that date. 7/18, I wanted to be fishing around 7/18. So the reality, 6:30 a.m. to 8:30, we fished at a Pocasset, pole 360, caught 46, 44, 33, and 34-inch bass. All right. Then we knew that the fish should be moving. We moved ourselves over to the radar tower. We caught 25 at 9 o'clock. We caught 25 more fish as we followed that fish. Now I knew that. I wrote it in my book. But I just based on that information there, I had that plan already put together the night before. Next. My book, my notes. Don't need a lot of notes, but you need notes. Next. Go back. All right. That's me. The day I retired, I became virtual. I created my business card, which was my name, my email address, and my phone number, and a picture of a striped bass, because that's all I needed. Any questions?
I noticed early on your pictures of your lures, you only had a hook in the middle, not on the tail of the lure.
Yeah, I grew up fishing a lot of, well, in my canal, my striped bass fishing became a lot of night fishing. Striped bass, as opposed to bluefish, typically hit the front half of the lure. So if you want to unhook a fish safely, the fewer hooks you have, the better. So I'm fishing almost all my striped bass lures with my hooks, with just hooks in the front. Now, if I'm targeting bluefish, I have a little bluefish bag, and then all that has is single tail hooks. Because I don't want a bluefish to be hooked on me with some struggling with those teeth in me. So, yes, you observed that correctly. Just use the front hooks for striped bass, because that's the way they bite. Use just the tail hook for blues. Now, if you go 3 or 4 or 5, 6, 7 days without catching a fish, and then I might put hooks on the front of it. Next.
Just want to look at one of the past that long book and go around a little bit.
Oh, no. I'll give you last year's.
Live bait versus artificial. If you use
Pardon?
live bait versus artificial,
Okay.
have you used both, and which is more effective?
I have used, so in the canal, the only live bait that I've used, I've used live eels around Slack County. I have had mackerel and squid jump out of the canal being chased by fish, and I'll pick one up and I'll put it on a hook and I'll throw it back out. But typically for the canal, we're primarily using artificial lures. Whereas if I'm out on a boat, I'm out on a beach, I would do definitely different things. But for the canal, it's primarily a lure fishing. Years ago, when you could fish live herring, you'd go to the herring warden, get your dozen herring, hook up a herring, and catch a fish. And that's what they did. All of a sudden, because of the herring population declining, they stopped allowing people to make herring, and all the people became much better fishermen because they had to learn how to fish artificials.
Bill, is there a bait shop you would recommend?
Actually, all of them. I have gotten good information. Mako's has one in Buzzards Bay. Mako's has one here south of the canal up by the bank. And by Albichon Hardware. So they got a brand. Red Top is good. Bruce at Canal Bait and Tackle. But if you go to see Bruce, he'll say, well, I heard from Bill, he's going to be out of town next week, so there'll be a big bite. but they're all good. Falmouth Bait and Tackle. Todd used to be the guy that they would call it Falmouth Bait and Tackle, and Todd Benedict says this. Yeah.
All lives.
Are there any women fishing?
Yes. Actually, when I was when I was coming up fishing a lot with bass striped bass, I think the best fisherman person in the club was a woman named Julie. And Julie was the best fisherman in bass striped bass in the early 2000s. She was a great surf fisher. On the canal, I know several women who are excellent fisher persons.
Just where do you get that book with the canal guides?
All the bait and tackle shops typically have them. So you go to the canal visitor centers. All of the canal visitor centers have them. They are hot property in April when they first really come out. You can get them online and download. You can go to the Army Corps of Engineers site. I have it downloaded on my phone.
The Cape Cod, the Corps of Engineers usually has a box of them sitting right in the shed outside the gate.
But it's the Bible. Anybody? All right. Well,
Thank you.
enjoy.